This is Pamela Nelson with the Grounding and Growing Leadership Podcast, powered by Align. And this is episode 31. We know if you listened to part 1 of our podcast with Anna Krueger that you have been awaiting this to publish. And so today is the day. We want to encourage you to go back and listen to episode 30 if you did not. But today we get the opportunity to continue to hear about the wisdom of Anna Krueger, who has had over 28,000 hours of sales experience. Listen along today to hear how you can hire and coach the best people for your team that are going to thrive in their position and enrich your whole team's performance.
Welcome to the Grounding and Growing Leadership Podcast, where everyone is a leader and leadership starts with you. I'm Tara.
And I'm Pamela.
Thank you for listening and inviting us along on your leadership journey.
Tara and I are so excited to be back for part 2 with Anna Krueger, and you're going to want to go back to part 1. Anna is a sales executive and consultant who comes in and works with people in training on sales. But Anna, what we heard from you is really understanding that relationships are the key to life. And how do we have conversations, whether it's in offering support for people, a product to people, how to engage with people, how to give them an experience instead of just check the box off. You gave us all of that in part 1. And Anna, you have had over 28,000 hours of experience in being able to work with people in sales. I would love to hear, getting to this point, what have been some of the key markers for you that when you're doing these trainings for, you said, thousands of people, are the difference makers that help people to connect your story to their story?
Yeah, one thing I am really passionate about sharing is how I got to where I am. And the goal isn't to talk about myself. The goal is to encourage the person that might be where I was about 10 years ago, where they might feel stuck. And I think just from coaching, I think a lot of people may be in that place, especially after the last 3 years, COVID. I just seem to run into a lot of people on coaching calls that feel stuck. So I want to encourage people. I do get to do some pretty amazing things now that are really fun because of my sales experience and where I am now. But where it came from was on part 1, I talked about being a college recruiter, and then I trained college recruiters. However, what I didn't say was what happened right after that. And I was training college recruiters in 2008. And also in 2008, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And I'm the only child of a single parent. So what that meant was it was really up to me to be her caregiver. And so I quickly moved in with her to start taking care of her. I was 26 years old. And thankfully, she lived 11 years. So that was far longer than they thought. They said 6 months max. And she lived 11 years, which I'm thankful for. But in order to take care of her, I took a job working from home. And in 2008, not a lot of people worked from home. And so they said, we really can't have you be a leader working from home. That'll set a precedent, and we need our leaders local. But what you could do is go back to the college advising role, and that will let you take care of your mom. So from 2008 to 2013, I was working from home as an extrovert, never leaving the house. The whole reason I was there was to be a caregiver. And 5 days a week was doing sales full time. And the whole time, to be honest, I was struggling with anger, frustration, partially because of what we were going through personally with the cancer, but also I know my heart is a teacher. I feel like that's how God made me. I'm a trainer. I love people. I'm an extrovert. And I'm at home selling college enrollments over the phone. This just doesn't make sense to me. I feel like my life is totally off track. And I really wrestled with just anger about that situation, while also being thankful I could work from home to take care of my mom. It was like both and. I'm so glad I can be here, and I'm really frustrated at the situation. And that's a long time, 2008 to 2013. That's a long time to feel really stuck. And without going into all the detail just for time, I ended up being recruited into the real estate industry in 2013. And suddenly I just realized all of those years working from home, my mantra just became pray and do the next right thing. I can't think about my future career right now. I just got to take care of my mom. I'm having trouble future planning. But the next right thing for me today is to show up and do my best at work. But through that, I gained 11,000 hours of sales experience by the time I got into real estate. And I look back now and I realize that was really training ground. I feel like God put me into a situation that I couldn't really change. And so I just did sales from home for all those years as an extrovert. And I gained a lot of hours of sales experience. And as soon as I got into real estate, they were very unfamiliar in that industry with the concept of inside sales. Inside sales is my specialty. And that was an opportunity for me to make waves in the real estate industry as an inside sales expert. I never would have had that opportunity without those hard years taking care of my mom working from home. So that's not a sales technique I'm sharing right now. I'm more just wanting to speak to the heart of people listening that might be in a season where you feel stuck, whether it's career or anything else. Sometimes we're in a training season for a future that we can't even imagine. And now I get to do amazing things like going to South Africa, like we talked about. I went there for work. Why I went there for work was all the years of hard times that helped me gain a skill. Without that, I wouldn't have the opportunities I have today. So I just really want to encourage people with that.
Yeah.
Well, I think, Anna, so a couple of remarkable things. First of all, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you. I think that's going to encourage someone who's feeling stuck. And we know a lot of people who are in that position of being caregivers right now, whether it's caring for children or caring for parents. And so there's a lot of people in that position. I think what's remarkable that's probably unique that you did to further encourage people who might be feeling stuck is you decided to learn from the season you were in. And there are people I know who've been in a position for the same job just 30 years in a row. They haven't evolved. And so being able to take what you learn and apply it to the next thing is, I think, part of what makes you remarkable. But that is a skill that everyone can build if they choose, is to, instead of looking at their situation as being stuck, is how do I apply this to the next opportunity? And how do I take and build upon this accidental expertise that I have?
Yeah. And what encouraged me in that was in that season, my faith is very important to me. And I was reading in the Bible, Jeremiah 29, and it talks about there are people that are in exile and they're just, how long are we going to be in this hard season? This is my version. This is my interpretation. But basically they're like, this stinks. How long are we going to be in this position? And we don't like it. And God says back to them, while you're there, plant gardens, have kids, like serve the community that you're in. And one day I'll bring you out of this hard season. And again, that's a paraphrase. But when I read that, it just felt like, yeah, you know what? I don't like this season I'm in. But if I'm going to be here, let's just go all in. And that's where that mantra came to me of just pray and do the next right thing. And that's something I thought of in probably 2008. And it's still today. Like people ask, how did you build your business? And yes, I have strategic number one. So there's been some strategy, but a lot of it has been, here's what I think I should do. And let me just pray and do the next right thing. And that's unfolded into what's happening today. Yeah, I think if you're in a tough season, strategize, think of how you can improve it. But also, if you realize this is the season I'm in and it seems to be where I'm supposed to be, even if you don't like it, just go all in because it's serving a purpose for you that you might not know until 10 years later. But just go all in, be all there. And it won't stay that way forever. Your situation will change at some point.
Hey everyone, this is Tara. You know how some podcasts will pause in the middle to give you an advertisement or a word from their sponsors? Well, we don't have sponsors, but we do have an important opportunity that we want to share with you. Listen, I think that you and I can agree that the old school top-down leadership model just doesn't work anymore. It would be nice if it did because it is easier to just command and have people pay attention. But honestly, people don't work that way because relationships don't work that way and leadership no longer works that way. And so we have developed a program called Grounded Leadership. And we are seeing incredible results with the cohorts that we're currently running. From emerging and new leaders to executives and business owners, leaders at every level are growing and grounding in their leadership through this program. Grounded Leadership is a comprehensive practice that ensures emotional maturity while encouraging individual growth and building thriving teams. Listen, titles are about authority, but they don't really influence change. Our leadership practice is what determines our ability to influence others. This journey is ideal for all leaders who are ready to maximize their potential, take responsibility for their influence. We have a cohort starting in January of 2024. It's going to be a mixed cohort of leaders from across the country from different organizations, and we really think that you would enjoy it. Not only that, we think you would find high value, and there would be a really high ROI for you, your leadership, and your team. If this is at all of interest to you, please reach out. In the show notes, we're going to have a PDF that you can click and see all the program details, but also you can email me, tara@aligntransform.com, schedule a quick 15 to 30 minute consult to get some of your questions answered, and we can determine if this is a program that's a fit for you and if you're a fit for the program. If this is of interest to you, we hope to hear from you. And now back to the podcast.
I heard you say, Anna, the word preparation. That season for me was preparation for what was next. And for a lot of our younger leaders that feel like a title or a degree or a position is enough preparation for them, that they should be like ready to go. How can you speak to those that are just like, I'm a racehorse and I'm ready to get going? And that may mean some not great things if you're not ready for what's coming.
Yeah. For young entrepreneurs or maybe just right out of university, there really is something, I call it street cred. You can have a lot of head knowledge. There typically needs to be a season where you're gaining on the ground experience. And that might mean taking a very entry level position somewhere and just go all in and embrace it. I think it's unusual to come right out of school and immediately get this amazing job. Most people that you hear that have these amazing successes, they talk about how they did some really remedial job and they had education way beyond what they were doing. And they put in the work and they learned the business. I have a friend right now who's probably in her 60s and her family has decided they want to buy a Chick-fil-A and have a Chick-fil-A somewhere. I don't know if they have those where you live, but the best chicken ever.
Oh, yeah.
And
yes.
I ran through Chick-fil-A the other day for breakfast and she took my order. And she's a very experienced, she was a basketball coach, very experienced. She doesn't need the job working at Chick-fil-A. So I asked her about it. And she said, yeah, if we're going to own a Chick-fil-A, we need to do every role to understand what it is that we would be leading. And I just thought, man, that takes such humility of being willing to go back to the basics. She's at the age where she could be retiring and she's taking orders at Chick-fil-A because she has a vision in mind of where she wants to end up to own one of them someday. And she's willing to do the hard work. Does that make sense? And I just think you've got to build credibility. You can have all the education in the world and you need credibility behind you. And that might mean doing some stuff you don't like out of the gate. And again, I would just say, I know everybody's perspective is different. And I really do believe in that concept of pray and do the next right thing. I have futuristic in my top 10. Strategic's my number one. I love planning the future. And the analogy that I would give when I say pray and do the next right thing, it's almost like we're walking down a sidewalk with our head down. And when you have your head down, just doing the next step and the next step and the next step, and you're looking ahead, just one step ahead, you notice the cracks in the sidewalk and the ants running across. You see every little detail. When a big boulder drops in the middle of the sidewalk, you're not going to miss it if you've been paying attention to the small little daily things that you're supposed to do. And so I do believe in planning best you can, but I also believe in make a plan and then just do the next right thing and know that it will work out. You've got to build credibility.
Speaking of doing the next right thing and building credibility, Anna, we work with a lot of small businesses, and I can think of a handful who either have hired or are in the process of hiring. So their salespeople might have been there a long time and they just evolved into the sales role, but they didn't hire that person for sales. But now they're maybe making their first hire in business development or sales. What should they be looking for in a salesperson? What do you recommend people look for when they're going to hire a salesperson?
Okay. This is a good question. A lot of my world is fixing, we hired the wrong person. And it doesn't mean that they're not a good person, just to be very clear. They just weren't right for that role. So I'm going to start with what not to hire because it's the easiest. And then I'll say what to look for. We have to remember this is not a customer service position. I coach a lot of people that were hired because they used to be in customer service. And the number one thing I hear them say is, I feel bad. I hear that sentence over and over throughout my week. I feel bad. And it's because customer service is not sales. Customer service is more solving problems and keeping people happy or fixing people who are unhappy. That is a completely different skill set than sales. So the number one thing I would say is, yes, we need to be customer service oriented, but we need people in the sales position who are drivers. They are not afraid to ask for the sale. Typically, they are the people that could strike up a conversation in the grocery store line with a stranger. Now, it doesn't mean they're doing that all the time everywhere. They don't have to be this extreme extrovert, right? I would say I know some sales, and a lot of times I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody at the grocery store today. But if I wanted to strike up a conversation with the stranger, I could totally figure out how to do that, and it would be fine. So you're looking for people that are easy to connect with. I would say, especially if it's a phone sales job, this sounds like a Hallmark card, but they need to feel like a friend pretty quickly over the phone, not all stiff and businessy, but like relaxed and like a friend. That's what we need in a phone salesperson. And the biggest thing there's two big things I would say is one, a teachable spirit. Oh my gosh, the biggest challenges I see in any hire, not just sales, any hire is I'm the new kid on the block, but I know everything. And I don't like your way, so I'm going to do it my way. That is a recipe for a disaster. And that will destroy a whole team. So you've got to find someone with a teachable spirit. And that's for any role, a humility that says I'm willing to learn and I don't know everything. And then the second thing, especially for the sales role, find out what their tenacity looks like. So what hard things have they been through and they just kept persevering. So that could be they're a marathon runner. And you're not a marathon runner if you don't know how to persevere. Now, I'm not a marathon runner. I don't care to ever be one of those people. So that's just an example. But you do want to find out what have they been through that's hard? What's your process? So you might say, hey, Tara, what's your process? Tell me about something hard you went through in your life and how did you process keeping going? And I want to hear some sort of way that they chose to keep going.
I love both of those because I also know businesses that have hired the swagger. So we need a salesperson and we don't feel confident in our own ability to do it. So people come in with a lot of swagger and a lot of confidence and they fail. And they fail because they lack the humility to learn that product, that business, that team. They don't know how to work as part of a team. Or when it gets hard, they move on. And so you hire them, you just get them trained. And you tell me if I'm wrong, Anna, but it can take a while for a salesperson to find their footing in a new company.
Absolutely.
And so then they don't have the tenacity to continue. So I love those two handles, those two qualifiers for people. I think there's a lot of people who could learn from that.
One thing too, talking about the swagger, I think it's fine if somebody's got some swagger to them. However, it can't only be that. And I find this with a lot of salespeople is really sales is a system. People that are naturally salespeople, they rely on their personality. I see this a lot with the entrepreneur who started the business that now I'm coaching to hire their first salesperson. And they're like, I don't know, I just do it. And it's their personality. And really what we have to do in that case is slow them down and think, you do just do it, but surely there's some sort of system somehow. And you have to make them think it through. And then usually they realize, oh yeah, I do have a system. I just never thought about it. But sales is partial personality. A lot of it is a system. I coached a salesperson once who so did not have a salesperson personality at all. He was like a doorknob. He was one of the best salespeople I coached because he just followed the system. He kept up with his follow-ups. He also didn't care if people liked him or not. He just wasn't a people person. So if someone was mad at him, he's next call. And so he actually was better than some of the people that have the sales personality because he was so dedicated to the system. So if you're hiring a salesperson, in my dream world, they have the system and the personality. But just don't be fooled because someone has this awesome personality that automatically means they're going to be a great salesperson. They could be a terrible salesperson because they don't have any systems and they're not willing to subscribe to them. So ideally look for both.
Thank you, Anna. And I think similarly, but different. So we also see a lot of businesses trying to build a sales function. So you mentioned it before. You have an entrepreneur who is responsible for the sales, or maybe you have one person and now you're growing and you need more people. And so what I tend to see is they end up putting the person who has the most experience with sales in charge of leading sales or in leading the sales team. And it's the difference between someone that was good at sales and someone who would be good at leading a sales team.
Oh man. I won't say names, but I'm immediately back at a team I was on in 2007 and it was a disaster. They put the top salesperson in charge of the team. And here's what I'll say. There's no formula that's exactly right all the time everywhere. The truth is, a lot of leadership is similar to sales. If we go back to the part 1 episode of this, we talked about how really great salespeople more have the mindset of coach, advisor. They ask good questions. They help people reach their own goals. For Pete's sake, if that's not the definition of a good leader, I don't know what is. But you also have to know the person you're putting into leadership. Are they a team player? I see so many sales teams do this where they just think the person who has the highest sales should be the leader. And maybe they're the salesperson who has the highest sales because it's their personality. Maybe they're terrible at asking questions, but they just have something about them that causes them to have a lot of sales. And they're not really others focused. They're not humble. What's their relationship to the team? One of the best sales leaders that I used to coach, I wouldn't say that she has the highest sales of anyone on that team, but she knows the craft. Yes, she has impressive sales numbers. That's true. But she also is incredibly oriented to the team. She cares so deeply to know each person on her team, what their goals are, what their family's like. She's all in and she's willing to do the hard work and she's willing to be there for them and have the coaching conversations. That's a leader. She doesn't have the top sales of anyone I've ever coached, but she is one of the best leaders that I know. So there's translatable skills from sales to leadership, but it's not automatic. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think related to that, something I also see a lot of organizations struggle with is how do we measure success? So a lot of times we think about sales and it is easier to measure than maybe some other areas or aspects of the business because we can look at results, right? So we can look at how many sales did we close, dollar amounts. But before any of that, if you want to be able to coach or you're building a new function, how do we know what should we be measuring? How do we measure success as we get started?
That's a really good question. So 2 answers for that. One's like the ideal scenario and one's the probably more realistic scenario. There's probably a lot of different industries represented in the listeners of this podcast right now. If you're in an industry that has metrics that you can look up and find, do that. So for example, I work with a lot of real estate agents right now, not exclusively, just happens to be a lot of my audience. There's books published about the typical conversion rates from contact to set appointment is this. By the way, it's 5%. If you're a real estate agent wondering, it's 5%. From set appointment to held appointment, 70% is pretty normal. We have that in a book in the real estate industry. So that makes it easy. So I would say the first thing is seek out your industry and just see, in my industry, if I did some research, could I find some benchmarks for conversions for my particular industry? If not, and actually, even if you can, either way, start measuring where you have been best you can. If possible, go back in time and try to figure out what's our last 3 months of conversions look like. If you're listening to this and think, shoot, I haven't tracked anything at all, it's okay. Just start today. But the idea is figure out where you've been the last 3 months, and that becomes your lowest benchmark. And once you start getting intentional with coaching, with training, getting the salesperson up to speed, you should see those numbers increase. If you've never really been real intentional about sales or participated in training and things like that, my guess is that were you to start that today, everything should increase. Mm-hmm. So the short answer is get a baseline and then start tracking today. I coach a lot of people, so I want to encourage the person who's never tracked and might be feeling really bad about that right now. Most people that I coach in sales come to me never having tracked anything. And we just start today. And then 6 months from now, it's pretty exciting because we can look back and see, wow, look how you've improved. 6 months ago, 1, you weren't tracking at all. And 2, you were at a 2% conversion and now you're at 4. That's incredible in 6 months. So seek out benchmarks if they exist. And if not, go ahead and create your own, okay, where are we today? And then track it over time.
Anna, we could talk for another 3 hours because you have brought so much wisdom here to the podcast. And I've loved that. I feel like I have also been a listener, allowing you and my favorite business guru, Tara, to be able to just dialogue and ping pong back and forth. But what I do want to ask as we finish up here, with all of the accolades that you have, when people mention your name, what do you want to be famous for? And known for. Give us that message, because as people are showing up today at work or at home or in all of their lives, having that consistent thread of not just how I perform, but really who I am. What do you want to be known for in that, Anna? And then we're going to close up this podcast and obviously want to have you back here again.
Yeah, you guys are fun to talk to. That would be awesome. So I'll share my answer and then what I believe it points to for me. The main thing I want people to feel interacting with me, whether that's a friend from church or my local community or someone that I coach in business, is that they are seen, loved, and good exactly as they are. One challenge I see in the sales industry is because it's performance driven, and it should be, it's sales, it's performance driven. But that's a very dangerous slope because people can start assigning their self-worth to their performance. And those are two different things. Yeah. I can be a terrible salesperson and be an excellent human being. They're not the same, but it's really easy when your 40-hour-a-week job is performance driven to start assigning your self-worth to your performance. And that's not where it comes from. So my goal is, there's a sign in my house that says, enter as strangers, leave as friends. My goal is that when people are around me, they just feel accepted for who they are. Even if we're having a conversation that you're not the right fit for the role, but you're a really excellent person, this just isn't the seat on the bus for you, which really ties into strengths, right? We all have a place, even if this isn't for you, that doesn't take away from who you are as a person. And for me, what that ultimately points to, I've mentioned my faith is important to me. Something I've been really convicted about in recent years is I used to think, what do I want to be remembered by? And I think that's worth considering and being intentional about. But ultimately, I'm not here for me to be remembered. I'm here to glorify God. And so if people know God better because of interacting with me or they learn something about him, that ultimately is the supreme thing for me. 100 years, people aren't going to remember Anna Krueger. But I hope that there's a legacy of people that knew God better because they interacted with me. That's really, to me, what it's about.
And we have been impacted by this conversation today. We know our listeners will be impacted. And we just thank you for your time, your intention, and the intention that you take into your work. I think helping people learn how to be better listeners, better communicators is so powerful. It doesn't matter if they're in sales or not. And if you are listening and you're thinking, I need to hire Anna, either as my coach or for training, which she does phenomenal trainings, we're going to have the links to her website and her contact information in the show notes. And we'd love to help you connect with her because she is an incredible asset and resource. And thanks for joining today, Anna.
Thank you. This was so fun. Thank you for having me. I think you ladies are great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on.